of multiple colleagues of mine that got physically injured. And the activity, and I got to
by UAPs or by people within the federal government?
both.
Okay, so there has been activity by alien or non-human technology and or beings that has caused harm to humans.
I can't get into the specifics in an open environment, but at least the activity that I personally witnessed, and I have to be very careful here because they tell you never to acknowledge tradecraft, right? So what I personally witnessed myself and my wife was very disturbing.
Grush also going on to elaborate on the claim that the federal government hurt people to cover up this information on extraterrestrials in another exchange.
Any personal knowledge of people who have been harmed or injured in efforts to cover up or conceal these extraterrestrial technology?
Yes. Personally.
Have anyone been murdered that you would think, that you know of or have heard of, I guess?
I have to be careful asking that question. I directed people with that knowledge to the appropriate authorities.
He also claimed that he himself has feared for his life since coming forward.
In the last couple of years, have you had incidences that have caused you to be in fear for your life for addressing these issues?
Yes, personally.
And in addition to repeating his claims that the government is withholding information on UAPs, he also alleged there are secret government programs related to UAPs and that the military misappropriates public funding to hide those programs from Congress. But also one thing that is very important with all of Grush's testimony here is that he wasn't really able to provide evidence or substantiate any of these claims. But that's also because so much of what he's talking about here is classified and also the subject of a whistleblower complaint, with Grush repeatedly responding to many of the questions that Congress members asked by saying that he couldn't answer in a public hearing. But he did say a number of times that he could provide some of the materials they asked for in a high security private hearing, which actually lawmakers have already officially said they will seek. But with all that said, like the comments made by Grush weren't the only wild accounts to come out of the hearings today. You also had both the other witnesses, Graves and Fravor, recounting their personal experiences seeing UAPs. And while that information wasn't new because these two have been public with their stories for years, it was still wild to hear them giving these accounts to Congress for the public record. I mean, Fravor's Tic Tac story just never gets old.
All four of us, because we were in F-18Fs, so we had pilots and Wizzo in the back seat, looked down a small, saw a white Tic Tac object with a longitudinal axis pointing north-south and moving very abruptly over the water like a ping pong ball. As we pulled nose onto the object, within about a half mile of it, it rapidly accelerated in front of us and disappeared. Our wingmen, roughly 8,000 feet above us, lost contact also. We immediately turned back to see where the white water was at, and it was gone also. So as you started to turn back towards the east, the controller came up and said, "Sir, you're not going to believe this, but that thing is at your cat point, roughly 60 miles away in less than a minute."
Graves also describing some personal firsthand accounts that he had, as well as recounting a different story in another viral clip.
In the 2003 timeframe, a large group of Boeing contractors were operating near one of the launch facilities at Vandenberg Air Force Base when they observed a very large 100-yard sided red square approach the base from the ocean and hover at low altitude over one of the launch facilities. This object remained for about 45 seconds or so before darting off over the mountains. There was a similar event within 24 hours later in the evening. This was a morning event, I believe 8:45 in the morning. Later in the evening, post-sunset, there were reports of other sightings on base, including some aggressive behaviors. These objects were approaching some of the security guards at rapid speeds before darting off.
And very importantly, at varying levels here, all three witnesses also called for more government transparency regarding UAPs, and they agreed that UAPs could potentially pose an existential threat to America's national security. And again, this is not everything. These are kind of just some of the main highlights I wanted to touch on. So of course, with this in the description, I'll also be linking to the full hearing so you can check it out yourself. But with everything we've just seen here, I gotta ask the question, what are your thoughts? And then, a giant crane towering high above Manhattan caught fire this morning and partially collapsed. Reportedly, the fire ignited 45 stories up in a building that was under construction on 10th Avenue. And as the flames weakened the cable holding up 16 tons of concrete, the crane eventually buckled, with video catching the horrifying moment when the crane's boom swung down, slicing through a building across the street and then crashing to the ground. According to reports, 11 people were hurt in this, including 2 firefighters, but miraculously, none had life-threatening injuries and nobody died, which is absolutely incredible considering this is a very high-traffic area, but thankfully it was early in the morning. And so for now, a chunk of 10th Avenue has been closed off while officials make sure the area is safe. And then, this new series of leaked text messages are painting what many have described as a disturbing picture of how Andrew Tate allegedly recruited women for sex work. Tate was arrested late last year in Romania before being officially charged with rape and human trafficking last month. Authorities accusing both Tate and his brother of using the lover boy method of luring women in under the guise of a real relationship before forcing them to do sex work. And while the Tates have repeatedly denied those allegations, Rolling Stone just received texts that seemingly show Tate discussing his recruitment tactics, with reports saying that these messages came from conversations held in 2021 within the War Room, a group of all-male associates Tate had. Rolling Stone saying sources close to the War Room verified the messages, which were reportedly sent in the channel titled PhD, which references Tate's previous pimp and hose degree program. And in one message, you see Tate discussing what he looks for in female partners, saying, "Give me an average moron with no skills who's blind loyal. I judge basically all females by loyalty. If they're loyal and they won't leave. In the end, they'll do everything you want." Then in another message, he sent photos of women and referred to them as targets and assets. But in most of the text they have here, he's actually just speaking about one specific woman who he says lost her support networks at home and who's been begging to see him. And the outlet saying that in an attempt to make this woman more dependent on him, he made up a story where her friends told him that she worked at a sex club. And so with that, he said that he got mad at her, and that way it would put this woman on the defensive. With Tate adding, the real goal is for her to agree to never go anywhere without me. Not even her hometown. I need her working. He also allegedly sent screenshots of conversations that he had with this woman where he told her that she could never go back to her hometown and that she never had to leave the house in Bucharest, to which she complied. Rolling Stone also claiming that he sent his associates messages where he detailed how he recruited her and working through challenges that he faced pressuring her. Right, like at one point, she allegedly refused to send photos or do OnlyFans, so he asked the War Room for feedback, to which some suggested he try good cop, bad cop, another telling him to act hurt so that she feels guilty and cries. With Tate at one point allegedly writing, "Since she moved to Bucharest, she's been fed, but nothing else. She's broke and she can't go home and she can't leave the house. Man, I almost sound evil, but I'm not. I'm a shepherd leading the sheep. She doesn't realize that following me makes life better for her." He also sent messages explaining how he would use Georgiana Nagel, an associate who's also being charged, to create elaborate ruses and fake conversations that could be used to persuade women. But it is also very important to note here that while prosecutors have listed this woman as an alleged victim of Tate, she is denied this. So there, Rolling Stone did also add that the court documents claim that she and another woman were instructed to defend the Tate brothers. But that said, for his part, a spokesperson for Tate has refuted the text, telling the outlet that the woman from the purported screenshots has publicly and categorically refuted any mistreatment from the brothers, claiming that this is part of a smear campaign. And while all statements from the alleged victims incriminating the brothers have been unquestioningly accepted by the public, the evidence supporting the brothers' innocence has not been given the same fair treatment. And that spokesperson also suggesting the messages were fake, right? Saying social media and AI have made it easier to anonymously present fabricated evidence. And adding, these realities raise concerns about the potential for a deliberate and targeted effort to sway public opinion and undermine the credibility of the evidence presented. But ultimately, that is where we are on this seemingly slowly developing story where we just kind of get a trickle of information every week or so. And then I've always thought that being famous while being in school would be just such a strange thing. But especially with the rise of TikTok, this has become a more common occurrence. Right? The barrier to entry to make engaging content online that people are going to like and follow, it's gotten easier and easier. And so with that, you're having more and more college and high school students just becoming famous, which has also led to situations like that of Livy Dunn now fearing for her safety. Because if you don't know Livy, she's a massively successful college athlete and social media star. Right? She's a gymnast at LSU who's made millions of dollars, in between the 4.3 million followers she has on Instagram and the 7.6 million she's nabbed on TikTok, she's landed some insanely lucrative sponsor deals. And while obviously that's great, I think she was also just recently in Sports Illustrated, there's also the dark side of social media fame, which she opened up about in a profile with Elle that was published just yesterday, noting that while people on her school's campus are mostly used to her celebrity status, she still gets approached for pictures and has to be careful walking around. And actually with that, adding she doesn't even attend in-person classes anymore for safety reasons, explaining there were some scares in the past and I just want to be as careful as possible. I don't want people to know my daily schedule and where I am, which is obviously concerning because, you know, we knew that there were safety concerns in the past, or you had things like massive mobs of boys demanding to see her outside of a meet earlier this year. With Elle saying that there were somewhere between 100 and 200 men in that crowd, and in some cases they were harassing other gymnasts who were competing. With Livy saying of that incident, I knew that my success had grown from the years prior, but I did not expect there to be that many people out there to see me and my team. And LSU's athletic department even ended up hiring private security to accompany the team to the meets. Also, regarding the people who say that Livy brought this on herself, saying, you know, you're asking for it, she responded, it's not a girl's responsibility how a man looks at her or how he acts, especially when you're doing your sport and that's your uniform. It's hard to handle at times, definitely because I'm just a 20-year-old student. I think people do forget forget that. Right, and again, those are just things that we know about, so how many other instances have happened? Because one of the common things we see with celebrity is that most celebrities try not to talk about this because they're worried that it's just gonna get more people to do it. And then, y'all, who hasn't felt the effects of the cost of living in recent years? And with credit cards, personal loans, medical bills, it's all too easy to fall into or further into debt. And how many of you wish that there was a better solution to paying off your debt? Well, thanks to today's sponsor, PDS Debt, they have customized 0% interest options for anyone struggling right now. Or if you're making payments every month on your debt and your balances aren't going down, listen up. PDS Debt rolls all of your payments into one low 0% interest monthly payment. Everyone with over $10,000 or more in debt qualifies, and get this, there is no minimum credit score required. You can pay off your debt in a fraction of the time